The revelation of the Third Fatima prophecy has taken the world by surprise, and recent events in the United States have brought deep fear to the surface. Many people are alarmed about what might happen in the coming days because they believe that we are experiencing the beginning of something great and prophetic, as Our Lady of Fatima predicted so many years ago. What we are witnessing seems to be the unfolding of this ancient prophecy, and it is frightening to think how every detail is being fulfilled so faithfully. The fear is palpable, and many wonder, are we really prepared for what is to come? The Third Fatima prophecy has always been shrouded in mystery, especially for the Catholic Church. For years, the secret was kept under wraps, revealed only to a select few on the grounds that the world was not yet ready to know its truth. It was only in 2000 that Pope John Paul II decided to open the sealed envelope containing this revelation. What was released stirred up the structures of faith and politics, as it dealt with delicate topics such as hell, world wars, the tribulations faced by Christians in the 20th century, and the fear of a new outbreak of communism, which, according to the vision, could soon sweep the world. But are the visions of Our Lady of Fatima really so accurate? For those who believe in God and Jesus Christ, these revelations carry a spiritual importance that transcends mere curiosity. And if you want to keep up with more content on topics as impactful as this, just subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates. Our Lady of Fatima is the way the Virgin Mary is known because of her apparitions to 3 shepherd children in Fatima, Portugal. It was during these meetings, which took place monthly for 6 months, that Mary asked the little ones to pray the rosary every day in the hope that their prayers would help bring the First World War to an end. Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco were the recipients of these divine messages, and the authenticity of the apparitions was officially recognized by the Catholic Church in 1930. Today, Fatima has become one of the main pilgrimage destinations in the world, attracting millions of faithful every year, especially on May 13th and October 13th, which mark the first and last apparitions. Pilgrims seek special blessings, cures, and answers to their deepest needs. The story of these apparitions, which spans 6 months in 1917, continues to inspire and strengthen the faith of millions around the globe. Among the 3 children, the best known is Lucia dos Santos, who, alongside her cousins Jacinta and Francisco Marto, witnessed the miracles of Fatima. Lucia played a key role in spreading the secrets entrusted to her by Our Lady, always under the guidance of the local bishop. The population's desire for a clear sign culminated in the miracle of the sun, which occurred during the last apparition in October 1917, an event witnessed by thousands of people and widely publicized in the press at the time. Unfortunately, Jacinta and Francisco did not live long after the apparitions, succumbing to the Spanish flu pandemic. Lucia, however, lived a long life, passing away in 2005 after dedicating herself to religious life as a Carmelite. In 1940, 23 years after the apparitions, the Bishop of Fatima asked Lucia to write down the secrets entrusted to her. She promptly recorded the first 2, but hesitated to write down the third. Only on the bishop's direct orders did Lucia finally reveal the third secret, sealing it in an envelope that was to be opened in 1960, when supposedly its contents would be easier to understand. This story, full of faith, mystery, and devotion, continues to resonate in the hearts of the faithful and to provoke profound reflections on the future of humanity. What do you think of the Third Fatima prophecy? Share your thoughts and stay up to date with more content that makes us reflect on the power of divine revelations. In 2000, Pope John Paul II took a historic step by beatifying Francisco and Jacinta Marto, the 2 children of Fatima, making them the youngest non-martyrs to be honored by the Catholic Church. Years later, in 2017, during the celebrations for the centenary of the apparitions, Pope Francis elevated this moment even further by canonizing Francisco and Jacinta, consolidating their figures as symbols of faith and devotion in the history of Catholicism. Our Lady's apparitions at Fatima took place on 6 separate occasions, and during these encounters, she transmitted 3 significant revelations to the children, which later became known as the 3 Secrets of Fatima. The first secret, of a deeply spiritual and disturbing nature, involved a vision of hell. Lucia dos Santos, one of the children, described in detail how Our Lady showed them souls tormented in the flames of hell. Although the vision lasted only a few moments, the intensity of what they witnessed deeply marked the children and reinforced their faith in Our Lady's promise that, through prayer and devotion, many souls could be saved from such eternal suffering. The second secret was linked to world events. Our Lady predicted that the First World War, which was underway at the time, would soon come to an end. However, she warned that a new and even more devastating world war would break out if humanity did not convert and if Russia was not consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. This request was seen with great urgency because, as predicted, the Second World War began in 1939 during the pontificate of Pius XI, just as Our Lady had warned. The third secret, perhaps the most mysterious and debated of the three, remained shrouded in secrecy for decades. Initially, Sister Lucia hesitated to reveal it, but at the request of the Bishop of Leiria, she wrote it down and gave it to the Church, which decided to keep it sealed until the year 2000. When it was finally released, it coincided with the beatification of Francisco and Jacinta Marto and brought to light a vision of destruction and penance. Lucia recounted that in one of her visions, she saw an angel holding a flaming sword, ready to destroy the world, but the flames were extinguished by the light emanating from Our Lady's right hand. The angel, in a solemn tone, exclaimed, "Penance, penance, penance." This vision unfolded in a scene in which a bishop dressed in white, whom the children believed to be the Pope, was walking through a ruined city, praying for souls as he climbed a mountain towards a large cross, where he would end up being killed by soldiers. Many associated this vision with the attempt on Pope John Paul II's life, which took place on May 13, 1981, the same day as one of the Fatima apparitions. However, as the vision showed the Pope being killed, while John Paul II survived the attack, some theologians and scholars believe that the third secret may refer to an event yet to come. When the secret was revealed, the then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who would later become Pope Benedict XVI, explained that the secret should not be interpreted as a fatalistic prophecy, but as a warning about the need for conversion and penance in order to avoid tragedies. Going back to the origins of the apparitions, on May 13, 1917, Our Lady appeared for the first time to Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco in the Cova de Iria in Fatima. She asked the children to return there in the following months and to pray the rosary every day for peace in the world. In her second apparition, on June 13, 1917, Mary asked them to add a specific prayer at the end of each decade of the rosary. It was during this encounter that she revealed that she would soon take Jacinta and Francisco to heaven, but that Lucia would remain on earth for longer to spread her message. During the third apparition, on July 13, 1917, Mary showed the children a terrifying vision of hell and announced that God wanted devotion to her Immaculate Heart to save souls from that fate. It was also at this time that she prophesied the Second World War and warned of the dangers of communism, asking for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart to prevent the country from spreading its errors around the world, resulting in wars and persecution of the Church. The fourth apparition, on August 19, 1917, took place in a tense context, as the children had been prevented from meeting Our Lady on the scheduled date. Nevertheless, 6 days later, Mary appeared to them in a field, reiterating the need for prayer and sacrifices for sinners. She lamented that many souls were lost because no one prayed for them. In the fifth apparition, on September 13, 1917, a crowd accompanied the children and witnessed white rose petals falling from the sky, disappearing before they touched the ground. Lucia took advantage of the moment to ask Our Lady to heal the sick, to which Mary replied that some would be healed, but that others would not, because not everyone had divine trust. Finally, on October 13, 1917, the sixth and last apparition took place, marked by the famous miracle of the sun, witnessed by between 70,000 and 100,000 people and visible even from miles away. This extraordinary phenomenon sealed the authenticity of the Fatima apparitions forever and remains, to this day, one of the most talked about and revered events in the Catholic world. Even the most skeptical journalists who were present to cover the event reported witnessing inexplicable phenomena. The Virgin Mary, in presenting herself to the crowds and the three children, revealed herself as the Lady of the Rosary. In her messages, she made a clear and urgent appeal for people to change their lives, seek forgiveness for their sins, and stop offending God, whose patience had already been sorely tested. It was a call to conversion, a warning that humanity urgently needed to turn to the path of faith and repentance. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, three humble children, were chosen for this extraordinary encounter with the Mother of God. Our Lady's choice was not random. The fact that she revealed herself to three young shepherds illustrates in a profound way the divine logic that permeates salvation history. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, with their simplicity and purity, became instruments of God's grace and mercy. Their lives demonstrate the paradoxical power of God, who often uses the small and humble to bring about great transformations. While the world, with its powerful and arrogant, was busy with its ambitions and strategies, these three little shepherds were called to transform the world with the strength of their faith and the simplicity of their lives. These three humble children became witnesses to divine mercy and bearers of a message that transcended their time and place. Through their simple and dedicated lives, they became ambassadors of God's love, reflecting the divine light that illuminates the hearts of those who are open to the truth. Under a simple oak tree in a small Portuguese village, heaven opened up to reveal the greatness of God's plan for humanity. At the beginning of the 20th century, Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia grew up in a modest environment, in an isolated rural village in Portugal. They lived with few material resources and had no access to formal education. They could neither read nor write, and the world beyond the mountains surrounding their village was unknown to them. However, amidst the simplicity of their lives, their families educated them in the Christian faith, passing on to them the fundamental values of the Catechism. Lucia's mother, in particular, played a central role in the religious upbringing of the little ones, teaching them prayers and Bible stories, which Lucia, the eldest of the three, lovingly passed on to her cousins. Despite their simple upbringing, the children's faith was deep and sincere. Their parents taught them not only how to pray, but also how to live a life of faith. They attended Mass on Sundays, prayed as a family, and practiced charity towards the less fortunate. Francis, with his contemplative nature, had a special sensitivity to silence and creation. He saw in the beauty of nature, such as sunrises and sunsets, the presence of God, and these experiences connected him in an intimate way with the Creator. Jacinta, for her part, had a special fascination with the moon, which she saw as a reflection of Our Lady's soft light, a light that brought peace and comfort. These children, in their purity, reflected a deep joy and innocence. They loved God in a genuine and selfless way, finding happiness in the little things and in God's presence in their simple lives. On an ordinary spring day in 1916, something extraordinary happened. After a common prayer, the three shepherds were enveloped by a dazzling light that emerged from the trees, so bright that it looked like pure crystal. At first, they didn't know that they were in the presence of a messenger from God, the angel of peace, who would come to prepare them for the great mission that awaited them. During the spring and summer of 1916, the angel of peace visited the children 3 times, revealing deep spiritual truths to them and instilling in them a strong sense of responsibility. He showed them God's love in its purest form and encouraged them to worship Him fervently. During one of these apparitions, the angel offered them the body and blood of Christ, a moment of profound communion that sealed the children's spiritual destiny. From that moment on, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta felt the call to dedicate their lives to prayer and sacrifice, seeking to intercede for sinners and help reconcile humanity with God. This dedication became even more intense when, on May 13, 1917, the Virgin Mary appeared to them for the first time, more radiant than the sun. For the next 6 months, always on the 13th, Mary visited them again, asking them to be bearers of her message of love and mercy to a wounded and warring world. She asked them if they would be willing to endure suffering for the sake of sinners, offering their lives in reparation for the sins that so offend God. These children accepted Mary's call with courage and faith, becoming, through their simplicity, powerful instruments of God's message to the world. With the revelations that Mary shared, the three children, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, began to understand that God's love is intimately intertwined with human history. They realized that sin often manifests itself as indifference to divine love, distancing people from God. However, they also discovered that, even in the face of the greatest human challenges and failures, God is infinitely merciful. He is always searching for humanity, extending his hand full of compassion, inviting them to return to the path of faith. Those who embrace divine love are called to collaborate with him through prayer and sacrifice, actively participating in his mission to care for and save humanity. During their first encounter with the heavenly light, the children were amazed. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta initially decided to keep what they had seen a secret. However, Jacinta, moved by the beauty and indescribable joy she felt at seeing Our Lady, couldn't contain herself. Like the disciples who, on the road to Emmaus, were unable to hide their emotion after encountering the risen Christ, Jacinta was the first to share her experience. Her heart overflowed with happiness, and she didn't hesitate to tell her friends about the greatness of what she had witnessed. Little by little, the story of the apparitions began to spread, attracting more and more pilgrims to the Cova Iria. As news of the apparitions spread, the three children began to face increasing challenges. Suffering was part of their mission, and Our Lady had already warned them that they would have to endure great trials, like many prophets before them. Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia were accused of lying, of seeking attention and fame. Even their own families began to doubt the veracity of the visions, except for Francisco and Jacinta's father, who firmly believed his children's accounts. The children were subjected to intense interrogations and constant questioning wherever they went. August 13th was particularly difficult. That morning, the local administrator, known for his free thinking and Masonic ideas, visited the children unexpectedly. He tried to trick them by promising to take them to the Cova Iria, but instead took them to another location, where he put even more pressure on them to reveal the secret of the apparitions. When they refused to talk, he locked them in a cell with other prisoners and even threatened them with torture, saying that they would be burned in boiling oil. Francis, with impressive serenity, replied, "If they kill us, it doesn't matter. We'll go to heaven." This unwavering calm was a reflection of his deep faith and trust in God. Faith completely shaped the lives of these young shepherds. The commitment they made before Our Lady was constantly renewed by Lucia and Francisco, and Jacinta's sincere desire to deepen her love for God grew every day. For them, being in God's presence was like living in a sanctuary. Just as Moses took off his sandals before the burning bush, they too lived in continuous reverence and adoration. This divine mystery they experienced strengthened and guided them in their mission to intercede for sinners and reflect God's light to the world. The lives of each of the three young men were marked by a total commitment to this mission. Francisco, with his introspective nature, sought God's presence in silence and contemplation, dedicating himself to prayer and inner peace. Jacinta, for her part, lived her faith with joy and generosity, transforming every little act of her daily life into a sacrifice pleasing to God. Lucia later took on the role of evangelist, spreading the message of divine mercy and heeding the call to consecrate the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. While Lucia continued her mission, Francisco and Jacinta, in their brief time on earth, lived lives of profound simplicity. Both were struck down by an epidemic of pneumonia at the end of 1918, just as Our Lady had predicted that they would soon be in heaven. Their lives, although short, became a living testimony to an intense and profound love, reflecting the light of the Lady who, with extraordinary beauty, revealed herself to them. The interpretation of the Third Secret of Fatima, which many believe contains a prophecy about catastrophic events or crises in the church, continues to generate debate to this day. Some see signs of its fulfillment already present in several countries, such as the United States. Among the signs are the moral and spiritual crisis, with the weakening of Christian values in American society and the rise of secularism. Issues such as abortion and same-sex marriage have caused divisions within religious denominations, which many interpret as a spiritual crisis. In addition, the sexual abuse scandals within the Catholic Church in the U.S. have deeply shaken the trust of the faithful, reinforcing the sense of a crisis within the church. Political polarization, economic and geopolitical tensions, and natural disasters are also frequently cited as signs of the times that some say align with the prophecies of Fatima. Events such as wildfires, hurricanes, and severe droughts are seen as part of an apocalyptic scenario that was supposedly predicted in Revelation, such as the Third Secret of Fatima. These signs are interpreted as warnings that humanity needs to change its ways and return to God before it is too late. Currently, we are seeing a notable increase in religious intolerance and persecution in many parts of the world, with Catholics in particular facing discrimination and marginalization in many spheres of society. While persecution is not always explicit or violent, it manifests itself in subtle ways, such as debates over religious freedom and laws that seek to limit the public practice of faith. This phenomenon can be interpreted as a modern form of persecution, resonating with the warnings of suffering mentioned in some interpretations of the Third Secret of Fatima. These spiritual and social hardships are a reminder of the importance of perseverance and faith in the midst of tribulation, as foretold by Mary in her messages. The recent pandemic has had a devastating impact, not only on the physical health, but also on the spiritual well-being of millions of people. In the United States, as in many other countries, churches have been closed, religious services have been suspended, and believers have been prevented from experiencing the community of faith in person. This isolation, combined with the loss of loved ones and economic hardship, has created a crisis of faith for many. Some have begun to question their relationship with God, while others have held on even more tightly to their beliefs. The suffering caused by this great tribulation can be seen as a manifestation of the warnings of the prophecy of Fatima, foretelling difficult times for humanity and proving how vulnerable we are to global crises that deeply affect the spiritual and social fabric of religious communities. With the worsening economic crises and growing food insecurity, especially in the post-pandemic period, many are beginning to realize that a crisis of greater magnitude may be looming. In the United States, concerns about inflation, rising food prices, and difficulty in accessing basic resources have set off alarm bells. This situation has led some to associate the current times with the warnings of catastrophic events present in the Third Secret of Fatima. The possibility of prolonged shortages and global food crises is part of the prophecies that evoke the need for spiritual and material preparation in the face of uncertain times, in which dependence on God and solidarity among the faithful become even more essential. In addition to the sexual abuse scandals that have shaken the confidence of many faithful, the Catholic Church is currently facing intense internal debate on controversial topics such as the role of women in the church, priestly celibacy, and acceptance of LGBTQ individuals. These debates are creating significant divisions between conservative and progressive groups within the church, especially in the United States. For some, these tensions reflect the warnings of the Third Secret of Fatima, which speak of future crises and divisions within the church. Suffering and internal separation are seen as a test of Catholic unity and fidelity to the essential mission of the Church, which is to bring the love and truth of Christ to all people. Amid these signs and warnings, the example of the three young shepherds of Fatima, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta, inspires us to live with integrity and to love God deeply. They experienced God's love for humanity in an intense way, and were chosen as prophets of that love. Spiritual shepherds offered to the world to guide hearts according to God's will. Our Lady of Fatima, in revealing her messages, expressed her deep desire that all the faithful pray daily for the salvation of sinners and for world peace. This call is an invitation to intensify our prayer practices and to draw ever closer to God. Too often, people only turn to prayer in times of great distress. Perhaps now is the ideal time to bring out that rosary that has been kept for so long. For those who already have devotion to the rosary, the message of Fatima is an invitation to renew and deepen their prayer life. Whether through adopting new devotional practices or dedicating more time and attention to dialogue with God and Our Lady. This time of reflection can be the necessary impulse to reconnect with the sacred, and the practice of daily prayer becomes a spiritual refuge and a strength in the face of the trials that the world faces. It is important to remember that, despite the warnings and signs described, the prophecies of Fatima are not part of the Holy Scriptures, but rather a call to conversion, trust in God, and perseverance in goodness. In times of uncertainty and suffering, our faith must be the light that guides us, just as it was for the 3 shepherds of Fatima. Their example teaches us the importance of a life of fervent prayer and total surrender to the divine will. If you like this content and want to continue exploring these topics, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And, of course, click on the video that is appearing on the screen to discover more about the secrets that the future can reveal to us.